Mini storage fire still raging in Ngau Tau Kok. Showdown in London ahead of EU referendum. And North Korean missile launches spark regional jitters.
Good evening. The number 4 alarm blaze that ripped through a storage facility at an industrial building in Ngau Tau Kok has now been raging for more than a day. 1 firefighter was killed. While 9 others fell ill, they have all been discharged from hospital. Adam Shu has our top story.
Thick smoke kept belching out of Amoy Camp Industrial Center during the day. Smog has shrouded nearby roads, footbridges and housing estates. This resident said she had to keep all her windows shut during the night and turn on an air purifier. More than a dozen fire trucks were deployed to fight the blaze, and Ngau Tau Kok Road was partly closed to make way. Firefighters kept splashing water on the building housing the mini storage facility. But for some time, that only served to keep the fire from spreading and temperatures from rising further. The Fire Services Department said it has deployed 18 water jets, 12 breathing apparatus teams and more than 200 firefighters. And after the collapse of some of the building's internal structures, the fire was gradually brought under control in the afternoon. Firefighters took turns entering the building and began clearing some of the items that remained. Staff from the building's department also arrived at the scene, but scorching temperatures prevented them from entering the building to see if the structure was still safe.
Based on our inspection from the outside of the building, there are some cracks appeared at some isolated locations of the external walls. To ensure public safety, the Fire Service Department and the Buildings Department have cordoned off the area thereby to prevent the public from getting near this area.
The fire broke out at around 11 yesterday morning. It was upgraded to number 4 alarm in the evening. The blaze claimed the life of a senior station officer, Thomas Chung. The Fire Services Department refused to comment on any possible mistakes involving the operation and what could have led to the officer's death, saying more time is needed to look into the matter. Adam Shu, TVB News.
The government has pledged to take immediate follow-up action. And as Winawong reports, the deadly blazes raise questions about safety measures at the city's mini storage facilities.
According to firefighters at the scene, several things made this mini storage fire particularly difficult to put out. With its large floor space, the facility is split into more than 200 tightly sealed storage rooms, making passageways very narrow and very hot. The blaze has sparked calls for the government to review fire safety at mini storages.
I hope that they could have certain code of practice or at least certain regulation which will reinforce the fire installation.
Secretary for Security Lai Tong-kwok has promised immediate follow-up action once the fire is put out. The Fire Services Department will partner with other government departments and inspect all similar facilities in the city. Warnings and even arrests may be made if anyone is found to be breaking fire safety rules. Lai does not rule out the possibility of changing laws to improve fire safety standards. He also responded to claims that officers at the scene last night had wrongly decided to turn on a positive pressure blower while a team was still inside the building. It was suggested that led to a sudden rise in smoke and temperatures, putting firefighters at greater risk.
Now, the floor area of that building is very, very large. And with this fire blower, it is, to my knowledge, quite impossible to create such an effect that you have mentioned.
The Fire Services Officers Association expressed regret over Chung's death. It also denied rumors that a fight had broken out between firefighters and officers in charge last night after Chung went missing. SC Storage, which runs the facility, issued a statement saying it's extremely saddened by the death. The company has vowed to conduct a thorough inspection on all its facilities, and it's contacting clients affected by the fire. Winna Wong, TVB News.
The intense debate over Britain's future in or out of the European Union moved to Wembley Arena last night. Leading lights of the Remain and Leave campaigns were locked in a televised confrontation ahead of tomorrow's national referendum. Polls have indicated the British public is so divided, the outcome remains too close to call. Alan Booknia reports.
Before a loud and raucous crowd of some 6,000 people and a large national TV audience, London's former and present mayors went head-to-head on immigration. Former Mayor Boris Johnson, a Leave campaigner, spoke about the strain unfettered immigration was putting on the country's National Health Service.
What we think should happen is an Australian-style points-based system, so we get the people we need for the NHS and indeed all our other businesses and services.
The problem is this: you might start off with platitudes saying how wonderful immigration is, but your campaign hasn't been Project Fair, it's been Project Hate as far as immigration is concerned.
The two also locked horns on Britain's economic future.
Our entire trade negotiating policy is consecrated, is handed over to the EU Commission, where only 3.6% of the officials actually come from our country. And it is no wonder they have not been able to do essential free trade deals with China, with India, with all the growth economies of the world, including America.
The idea smaller countries can negotiate better deals than the European Union is rubbish. And you know, the reason why we get good deals is because, look, if you are a company in China, in America, in India, and you want to do business with 500 million customers, you can have your headquarters here in London and have a gateway to 500 million customers. If we left the EU, the market would be much smaller.
Meanwhile, in cities across Europe, there are symbolic gestures urging Britain to remain in the EU. In Vienna, a giant British flag was projected onto a building in the city's museum quarter. In the Spanish capital, a Union Jack was flown from the presidential headquarters of the Madrid regional government. And in Florence, the UK flag was draped over the landmark statue of David. Alan Booknia, TVB News.
The referendum has sent jitters across financial markets. Among the key concerns, property prices in the UK and the value of the pound. Diana Lynn reports from London.
Hong Kong-born Mrs. Low settled in the UK over 20 years ago. She owns 3 properties and plans to buy another this year to rent out.
I'm more cautious now than, let's say, last year. There's lots of uncertainty, isn't it? We can't be sure what's going to happen next. And so I think I prefer to just wait and see.
The UK government has warned Brexit would cause the British pound to depreciate, a year-long recession, and property prices to plunge by some 18% within 2 years. Some in real estate remain upbeat.
This fundamental demand and supply imbalance is keeping a floor under house prices.
Others think Britain leaving the European Union could change that.
There's a consensus that it would be a 5% fall in GDP per capita. In 10, 15 years' time, people would be less well off. Certainly, you would expect that will dampen demand for property, which would tend to have a downward effect on prices. So if there is a vote to leave, I expect you would see a substantial depreciation of the pound on Friday, probably to somewhere below $1.40 per pound.
So if the economy does start weakening slightly, our currency weakens, and so it's great for people coming from Hong Kong and Singapore and China because they effectively get a price reduction because of our currency.
To buy or not to buy? Fair is foul, foul is fair. To stay or not to stay? That's the question. Diana Lynn, TVB News, London.
The widower of British MP Jo Cox says she was murdered because of her strong political views. Brendan Cox told reporters that his wife, who was killed last week, had been deeply troubled by the tone of the EU referendum campaign.
I think she was very worried that the language was coarsening, that people were being driven to take more extreme positions, and she was particularly worried. We talked about this regularly. We were particularly worried about the direction of, not just in the UK but globally, the direction of politics at the moment, particularly around creating division and playing on people's worst fears rather than their best instincts.
In news closer to home, North Korea has fired 2 more intermediate-range ballistic missiles. The launches are raising security worries in the region, with Japan and South Korea insisting the test cannot be tolerated. James Aiken reports.
Regional defense officials say the first missile was likely launched from a mobile platform from the east coast city of Wonsan. It disintegrated mid-air after a flight of about 150 kilometers. About 2 hours later, another intermediate-range missile flew about 400 kilometers, more than halfway towards the southwest coast of Japan's main Honshu Island. Such missiles are designed to fly more than 3,000 kilometers and could theoretically reach any part of Japan and the U.S. territory of Guam. Japan's defense minister says the second launch appears to be Pyongyang's most effective test yet, and the threat to Japan is intensifying. The launches were in continued defiance of international warnings and a series of United Nations Security Council resolutions that ban North Korea from using ballistic missile technology. Pyongyang, which has been slapped with stiff international sanctions because of its nuclear activities, rejects the warnings as an infringement of its sovereignty. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe strongly condemned the latest launches, calling them unforgivable. South Korea's foreign ministry warned of even tougher sanctions against the North and further isolation. And overnight, the United States delivered a warning to the North before the missile launches.
So we certainly would urge North Korea to refrain from doing that sort of thing. We continue to closely coordinate with our allies in the region about the situation, and we're watching it very, very closely.
North Korea has recently claimed a series of breakthroughs in its push to build a long-range nuclear missile that can strike the continental U.S. Analysts say failures are a normal part of developing missile capabilities. The launch comes as diplomats from the U.S. and North Korea attended a six-nation security forum in Beijing. An American State Department official said there were no plans for direct talks between the representatives. James Aiken, TVB News.
India has launched a record 20 satellites in a single mission.
3, 2, 1, 0.
And that's the most in the history of the country's space program. A rocket carrying the satellites blasted off from a space center in Andhra Pradesh state today. The satellites belong to several countries, including India, Indonesia, and the U.S. Analysts say today's maneuver is a sign New Delhi is emerging as a major player in the space market.
Still ahead in our newscast, a bid to lower age requirement for LegCo election candidates thrown out. Tycoon Li Ka-shing voices support for a higher profits tax. And the latest Lionel Messi masterpiece.
I love a challenge, especially when the whole world is watching.
China travels the world and meets top designers.